Let's start off by calling roll, starting with Ms. Davison.
Here.
Richard Gordon here.
Kirk Scott.
Tom Fitty.
Jason Diebel.
Okay, so we are looking to have an alternate, and I think the next person up will be Brian Bomback. Are you familiar with the record enough to proceed? Okay. Yeah. So let the record show we're going to seat Mr. Bomback. And would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions to the agenda this evening?
I have one.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to public delegations. Public delegations is a time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission about certain matters. Items, referrals, or applications subject to a decision by the commission, a public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. During delegations, members of the commission will not directly answer questions or make comment. Is anyone here to address the commission as a public delegation? Okay. I'm seeing none, so let's move on to reports. Communications.
None at this time.
Thank you. The zoning representative would have been Michelle, and she was called away on business. Do we have a synopsis or any like general things that?
The last meeting, I do not. We do have something on our agenda regarding what's on their agenda. Referral 8-3A. We'll talk about that later.
Thank you. Thank you. Ex officio, Mr. Weber.
Let me just come up to the mic, because I normally speak from the seats, and I know you can't hear me if anybody wants to hear me. In the last couple of months, we've been talking about fire marshal permits and inspection fees, and there'll be a public hearing on 4/19. That we haven't historically had fees for those. Every other town in the state does. And the building and zoning fees, we're revising those. And then we had a public hearing on the EV charging stations, and that passed, so that's behind us now. Other than that, we've finished up our budget deliberations, and the annual town meeting will be May 8th, and the referendum will be May 18th to finalize the budget. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything else for me.
Thank you. Next to the planning director, Mr. Gaishel.
I have nothing to report at this time. I may suggest we have an executive session to follow up on some pending litigation. Aside from that, I'll take that up with Michelle and we schedule that for our next meeting.
That sounds like a good idea. I don't know where that's coming from.
It's from this back here.
Oh, thanks. As chairman, Michelle Williams is absent. As seating as chairman tonight, I don't have anything. Which brings us to the meeting minutes from February 14th. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 14th?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Diebel. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davison. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. There are no public hearings tonight. We are hearing one application for a re-subdivision. An application is the application of Kristen T. Clark, P.E. for East Lyme Land Trust, Inc. for a 3-lot subdivision. The agenda here says waivers of section 678 of the stormwater management regulations and section 5-2-2- section 8 preliminary resource impact and conservation plan of East Lyme subdivision regulations at property located at Hathaway Road, East Lyme Assessor's Map 35.0, Lot 23, otherwise known as Hathaway Farms Subdivision Phase 1. And I think there is would it be an error to say that we're still looking for the waivers? Or do we point it out that it's on the agenda as listed as waivers? I think that's been withdrawn.
That's correct. Through the process of that, the application process,
Mhm.
the applicant has withdrawn those waivers.
Okay. So, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Garrity for the applicant, Kristen Clark. I'll try and be brief tonight, as I've read Mr. Gaishel's memo dated April 5th, 2023, wherein he recommends approval of the subdivision. One of the items that was submitted or raised was a notation on the map, which has been the front page of the map, which has been submitted regarding the open space. Also submitted today a letter dated April 10th, 2023 from my client, Kristen Clark, regarding the open space issue that was raised. We have approximately 6/10 of an acre that we're proposing for open space. We would like to defer the rest under section 7-2 of the subdivision regulations. We can do that provided that the plans are noted, that there's a deferral, so that if there's any further development of the remaining land, the additional 10% open space requirement would have to come from that property. At this point in time, the plan is still that the East Lyme Land Trust owns the remaining land. The Land Trust has submitted a letter indicating that they would accept the conservation easement over these 3 lots. But as this commission is probably aware, the intent is to make 115 acres of that remaining land open space, which would then obviously more than exceed the open space requirements for these 3 lots. And we are continuing to work with the Land Trust in that regard to endeavor to get the 115 acres of land there transferred. Well, it's been transferred, but into permanent open space. Part of that relates to the pending application for DEEP for conservation funds or open space funds. I don't know if there's any questions that the commission has at this point in light of Mr. Gaishel's memo. I have Mr. Marine here, our surveyor, and I have Mr. May here, our engineer, for that.
Any questions on the application?
None, I was just going to point to my memo. Obviously, I'm more than happy to go through the findings. We did get it posted, I think, prior to the weekend, so hopefully most of you got a chance to take a look at it. They had addressed the open space issue by deferring that to a later date. They did, in fact, provide a draft conservation easement, which was dated March 9th. And I guess the Land Trust is willing to take the open space. I did question, I'm not sure, because they own the adjacent land, are they able to take the conservation easement?
They should be able to, well, in the zoning regs or the subdivision regs, they're listed as a approved conservation entity to receive that. So they could receive the conservation easement. It's going to be on a separate legally deeded piece of property. So it should not impact in any way their ability to take that.
That answers that question. I have no further questions of the applicant. I believe the application is now complete and does meet the regulations. That said, I did have some conditions, and I would note that the plan has been further revised through April 7th. So in the motion, the plan date reference was revised through March 7th. That can be updated to April 7th, April 7th, 2023.
There was also,
Condition 4 of that being that we do have the draft conservation easement. That was the only thing that would be required to really take a look at. And like I said, that was submitted on March 8th, 2023. So in that proposed motion, you could probably delete item 4.
that would be the one saying copies of all deeds.
Correct. I mean, you could leave it either way. It makes no difference. I mean, it's a bit of a moot point. So if there's any other questions you have of me, I'll be more than happy to answer.
And there was one thing with the Ledgelight report. They mentioned about, like, one of the memos that was in the record. I forget. I don't know exactly which one. There was a mention about them not accepting one of the lots.
Yes. So if you in my memo, section it's page 2, section 5-4, kind of addresses that. So there was a memo where they rescinded their approval of the 115-acre parcel, and then so there was a subsequent memo which was submitted dated March 12, 2023, which indicates that the 115.43 acre parcel is capable of siting a 4-bedroom house with a private well, the driveway, and on the proposed plans it's shown on half of the road, not over on Scott Road. But that item has been addressed.
All right, I would just point out that when we submitted it to Ledgelight, even though there's no proposed development, that additional lot is the 115 acres. Ledgelight still wanted us to demonstrate that a septic system could go in on 115 acres. We obliged because you can pretty much find a location anywhere to do that. So even though there's no intent to develop that property at this point.
And that's also in regards to our own regulations. We don't have that remaining land of. It's a building lot for at least one single-family home, or commercial, yeah, depending on the zone it's in, obviously.
Do you recommend reading this memorandum into the record, or do we, Mr. Deschamps, procedurally, do you recommend that, or?
The memorandum is part of the record as Exhibit X. Probably move to the motion. And as you read the motion, I did indicate that it's based on the findings in the memorandum. I guess for the sake of public, we can certainly read it. I'm more than happy to.
We'd have to take turns. I'm not reading that.
But ultimately, it does go through every section of the regulations. It's a kind of a boilerplate memo in the sense that we address each section. Section -3-4, plan of development. Section 4-2-11, easements and deeds. Section 5-4, sanitation. Section 5-5, water supply report. Section 5-2-2E and 6-8, stormwater management. Section 5-2-2G, erosion sedimentation control. Again, the commission can, through the process of approval, certify that the ENS plan is complies with the requirements of the regs, which it does. Section 5-6, the pesticide report. There was no evidence of pesticide use that exists. Archaeological survey review. We have evidence in the record from Dr. Sarah Sportman, the state archaeologist, indicating that there's likely no buried archaeological resources They recommend no additional archaeological work. Section 6-2, lot design specifications. Again, correspondence from Bill Mulholland, our zoning official, dated February 9th, indicates that it complies with the zoning requirements. Section 6-7, open spaces. It looks like we've been able to address that. Section 6-9, requirements regarding flooding. Again, we have some correspondence from the town engineer dated March 10th. His only concern was to have the developer apply for a right-of-way permit for each driveway and post a bond. So ultimately, that goes through the entire section of the regs and the criteria which the commission has to use to evaluate the application. So, it's a synopsis of that memorandum. But,
Great.
all those items have been addressed.
Great, thank you. Is there any further questions from the commission about this application or the memorandum? So, let's see if we can hear.
The other, on the, in the conditions too, item 3, that too can be deleted. By Exhibit Z, which was the updated cover sheet, they addressed the error in the table, which was 25% to 15%. Mr. Mulholland pointed out.
Can you,
There was a lot in the table regarding the RE40 rural district. The required amount of lot coverage is 15%. They previously had it stated as 25, I believe.
oh, 6-2?
Should be 15%.
It's 15%. So there was just an error in the required amount on that column. And if you look for the lots, they all are well under 15%. They're 8, if not 1.
Did you say Exhibit Z?
Yes.
Is that available in the area?
I added it because I received the hard copy tonight. I was opened it on my email this morning, so I was not able to get it on the website, but it is part of the record. So.
Last exhibit in you just put it in the green. Always put it in the green. What was that?
Gary, can you remind me where they put the note about the future open space?
Where it says above the signature box approved by the
Gotcha.
Eastern Planning Commission, right above it.
Okay. Do you care to see Exhibit Z? The note is up in the paragraph there. So we're looking for a motion to approve the plan for the application of Kristen T. Clark, P.E. for East Lyme Land Trust, Inc. for the 3-lot subdivision with conditions and details noted in Exhibit X. All right? And what other verbiage do you feel that we would want to have in a motion?
Well, I think, as I said, you can eliminate items 3 and 4 out of that motion. Item 1 is addressed because we put the note on the plan, so you could theoretically take that one out. I would think item 2 would be item 2 and 5 are the only 2 conditions I think would be necessary. You could leave one in there, but they're providing that anyway between the note and the 0.68 acres of open space.
So we don't need modification 1, 3, or 4 based on. So that would be our modification.
And then obviously number 5, you would have to revise slightly because you're not going to post an erosion control bond for each amount until you come in for a building permit. And number 5 is saying that would have to be done prior to the filing of the application prior to filing subdivision on the land record. So sequentially, I think it just, you should probably delete 5 as well, because there's no other items that would have to be submitted in order to make the application complete.
So if that is true, then you're only looking for item 2.
Correct.
So we're gonna strike items 1, 3, 4, and 5 from, what are we calling this section here? The
Those are just the conditions, modifications.
conditions and modifications.
So my suggestion would be just to, I think the language in the motion is adequate. I would just note that the March 7th date should be updated to April 7th, 2023.
Where's the date that you're?
So under resolution for subdivision application, where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, should be 6th line down. It says it's dated December 7th, 2022 and revised through. Should just be April 7th, 2023.
Today's the 11th. It was revised even today in that the cover sheet.
Cover sheet was revised April 7th, 2023.
Oh, it was, okay, it was April 7th. So did you have a copy of what the motion would have been, or?
Yeah, I do.
Do you mind reading that back?
So you want the whole motion?
Well, just
The first part?
just the part that we're considering as the current motion.
Okay, so now therefore, based on the findings of the memorandum, is that what you want me to start?
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I guess I can just read that myself. If it's just that section, then I or whoever makes the motion can read it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Jason.
Get ready, everyone. Now, therefore, based on the findings in the memorandum from Gary Gaishel II, Director of Planning, to the East Lyme Planning Commission dated April 6, 2023, I hereby move to approve the application known as the application of Kristen T. Clark, P.E., for East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated for a 3-lot subdivision at property located at Hathaway Road, East Lyme, Assessor's Map 35.0, Lot 23, and plans entitled Hathaway Farms Subdivision Phase 1, property of East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated, Scott Road, East Lyme, Connecticut, dated December 7th, 2022, and revised through April 7th, 2023. Prepared by John Paul Marine LS of Gerwick Marine LLC for Kristen T. Clark, P.E., applicant, and the 4-sheet plan entitled Hathaway Farms Subdivision Phase 1, property of the East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated, Scott Road, dated December 7th, 2022, revised through February 8th, 2023, prepared by Timothy May, P.E., of May Engineering LLC, which is further subject to the following administrative requirements and required modifications to the site plan and or other materials submitted in this application. That would be an erosion and sedimentation control bond for each lot in the amount satisfactory to the town engineer and planning director and in a form acceptable to the Town of East Lyme Planning Commission shall be posted with the town prior to the start of any site work, including but not limited to clearing, grubbing, filing, and grading. This, shall I keep going? Yes, sure. This approval is specific to the subdivision plan submitted as the application known as the application of Kristen T. Clark, P.E., for East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated for a 3-lot subdivision at property located at Hathaway Road, East Lyme Assessor's Map 35.0, Lot 23, and plans entitled Hathaway Farms Subdivision Phase 1, property of East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated, Scott Road, East Lyme, Connecticut, dated December 7th, 2022, and revised through April 7th, 2023. Prepared by John Paul Marine LS of Gerwick Marine LLC for Kristen T. Clark, P.E., applicant, and the 4-sheet plan set entitled Hathaway Farms Subdivision Phase 1, property of East Lyme Land Trust Incorporated, Scott Road, dated December 7th, 2022, revised through February 8th, 2023, prepared by Timothy May, P.E. of May Engineering LLC. Any changes in the subdivision plan shall require prior approval from the Commission and or the Director of Planning. Any change in the development plan layout other than those identified herein shall constitute a new application. The owner applicant shall be bound by the provisions of this application and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Devel. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion. Richard Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Thank you.
On to zoning referrals. We have an application application of East Lyme Zoning Commission for a text amendment to amend Section 9 CB Commercial District by modifying Section 9.2.3 Mixed Use and Section 25.5 Table of Minimum Controls for specific permits. I'm sure there's some background that we need to discuss on this.
So, my understanding is from the materials in your, I don't know if you have it in your packet, but the letter that came from the zoning commission, I'll just read that into the record. It's to the East Lyme, memo to the East Lyme Zoning Commission from Bill Mulholland, zoning official, regarding the proposed regulations, text amendment to the CB zone, building bulk mixed use, dated January 31st, 2023. The zoning commission subcommittee on the building bulk / mixed use met on a number of occasions to review this issue. The discussion was diverse and various options were discussed, such as leaving the regulations as they are, making drastic changes, and making minor modifications. The committee, after some debate, agreed to offer the following text amendment for consideration and possible action. Specifically, it is proposed to delete from Section 9 CB Commercial Districts, Section 9.2.3 Mixed Use Developments, and from Section 25.5 CB Zone under Mixed Use. And it's further proposed to add Section 9.2.3, which would state mixed use existing buildings, and add to Section 25 CB Zone Mixed Use conditions: 1, second floor residential units over existing first floor commercial uses in existing buildings. 2, and now there's an undisclosed amount of square footage here. Looks like the subcommittee had not determined this, but that the square footage to be no greater than the existing first floor area. Second floor residential units may be added as new second floor addition to existing one-story building. Parking in accordance with Section 22, height as per Section 9, subject to Section 34 architectural design review, and municipal sewer and water must be provided. So I would say, just based on the way this is written, looks, I'm not sure I quite fully understand what it's getting at, but looking to delete the mixed use use in downtown or in the commercial business zone. I don't know if that's really appropriate at this time. We've seen a lot of redevelopment and growth in the downtown. So I'm not sure, with the economic vitality that we were experiencing, by eliminating the mixed use, wouldn't that hinder and that development and that economic health? That being said, this still is proposing to allow residential units over existing first floor buildings. So that's, I think if I interpret that correctly, that means any existing one-story building in the downtown CB zone could do a second story, so long as the square footage is no greater than the existing first floor area.
But can
Obviously,
they
got
do
any
that now?
parking requirements.
I mean, could they do that now without the change?
Well, that's permitted in the mixed use regulations as it stands. So, and I think, some of this is in response to some of the development we've already experienced, that it really speaks to maybe the size and scope and the massing of the buildings, how they actually appear on Main Street architecturally. That's not to say some of the smaller buildings aren't and don't provide some architectural appeal of their own, as well as provide a sense of smaller, more sense, I don't want to say sense of place, but it provides a sense of character unique to East Lyme, Niantic, because they are a smaller scale. That being said, I might, we do have architectural guidelines. Maybe it might be appropriate to codify those as more regulatory over the CB zone and go that route, saying if you've already got guidelines, rather than eliminate mixed use altogether and just say you can only have mixed use in these specific cases where you're a one-story building, maybe you can regulate the massing of these buildings. And the other option possibly is maybe eliminate the parking overlay requirement, or rather we have the parking overlay zone where developers are getting credit for existing parking that exists in the downtown, where they don't have to provide that parking on site. So if they then if they eliminated that regulation and went back to saying you need to now provide your parking on site, well, the massing of those buildings are naturally going to be smaller because you're going to have parking requirements to meet. So that might be a better approach, rather than eliminating mixed uses
altogether. I would, from an economic development perspective, I would be weary of doing that. But I think we've seen great success in the regulations that are in place at the current moment. I think we're going to see more redevelopment in the near future of several parcels. I also would note that developers are looking to buy up multiple parcels contiguous, one, to make it economically viable for them to build a thing and actually profit from the uses and tenants that establish in that building. So it's definitely a balancing act. My opinion here is this may be a little hastily written, and I'd be more than happy to maybe even sit down and meet with zoning, and we could even do a joint subcommittee, things like that, to talk about how to address some of the issues that the downtown is going to be experiencing in the near future. Parking, definitely one of them, and I think it's something that we're going to have to look at. Where can we establish more public parking in our downtown, and particularly with developments on in the fringe that will impact. And I don't know if you're aware, but there was a development that's been before our Water and Sewer Commission. 400 units. That's significant impact on in terms of traffic and on our infrastructure. So we'll have to look at that closely as that progresses.
So our action here is to approve or to say whether or not this amendment is consistent or inconsistent with our POCD. That's our action.
Correct.
Do we have the somewhere in our materials? Do we have the before and after version of the sections that they're talking about revising? Because to be honest with you, I mean, like it was a kind of a scattered, not following the details about the changes that are being proposed. It's not 100% clear, like the cause and effect and like what the actual regulation is going to be after the changes that they're proposing.
Sure, I can pull up the zoning regs now.
And the other question is this like I think I heard you say that this is a result of a subcommittee that they had?
Yeah, apparently there was a building bulk / mixed use subcommittee that the zoning commission had established to take a look at some concerns I guess they had in the cities.
Their goal for doing this was to kind of plan how the land use would go. I mean that's right. I mean they're trying to affect something by changing the regulations. Like they're trying to.
Yeah, it was the subcommittee on building bulk and mixed use. So their concern, I think, was the size and mass, of buildings.
New buildings.
And new buildings, new construction, how they appear on Main Street.
So I could see the intent of that. Being, you want to maintain a certain town feeling, or keep it consistent with the other parts in the downtown area or whatever. I mean, I could see wanting to do that.
So
It just seems like the implications for making this change are a lot bigger than you might guess.
So essentially, I mean, 9.23 is just mixed use. If I go back to section 9, I had it up there briefly. It just permits mixed use development. That's literally what it says. And then section 25.
So they want to get rid of that. They want to get rid of the mixed
eliminate
use.
the section in section 9 that says it's a permitted use by. Or I'll go back to section.
Is it because it's too ambiguous?
No, they want to replace it with a different type of mixed use regulation. which is basically CB zone mixed use, and this is what it's going to consist of: second floor residential units over existing first floor commercial uses in existing buildings. Period. No new
Not for new
mixed use buildings.
Oh, really?
And then the square footage is to be no greater than the existing first floor area. The second floor residential use may be added as a new second floor addition to an existing one-story building. So it kind of clarifies number one. Obviously, parking has to meet section 22. Height as per section 9. You still got to maintain your building height of 35 feet. Still subject to section 34 architectural design review. And obviously needs municipal sewer and water must be provided. So that's another caveat that's going to limit, potentially has to be available. So that's what they want to replace just mixed use developments with. So in section 25, we would take a look at the use, mixed use, and the dimensional requirements or special requirements that they have for it. And those would go away and be replaced by these 7 items.
Don't we already have regulations on the size of buildings for the downtown?
Yes, as part of the regulations we do, yes. So here, I'll just note, we'll start here. Here's the parking overlay zone. Pretty much all the entire area that's zoned CB commercial. So section 25 is special permits. So mixed use development is a permitted use by special permit, which does give the zoning commission more discretion in the review of these applications. But you'll see right there, it's right up front, it's subject to architectural design. So that's where kind of my thought is, maybe going down the route of adopting more, I guess, I wouldn't call it restrictive, but more guidelines or codifying the design guidelines and making them requirements versus eliminating mixed use altogether.
So this was the product of a subdivision, subcommittee, correct?
Correct.
And you were suggesting that perhaps another subcommittee.
Maybe a joint effort if they like.
Joint
I mean,
effort.
it doesn't have to be. I mean, certainly they could look at it. I think if we're looking to find something that's consistent with the plan of development, open collaboration on reg might be beneficial. Might be more efficient. Just a thought, but and I gotta find a mixed use. So depending on your use is let's say a special use, a bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfasts have to meet certain requirements. They're permissible in the CB zone.
So this would all go away and be replaced with 7 items.
Yes, so mixed uses would have to be basically second floor residential units. I think we would essentially limit it to, it sounds like. It has to be an existing building, have a commercial use on the first floor already, and you could put something on the second floor. And I would say that's, I don't know if, I think this Kirk might have been the only one, maybe Tom.
On PLCD?
If you recall, we adopted several years back the incentive housing zone. And by these are areas in town, particularly one is over Mitchell's, the Mitchell property, what is the Spice Club and Village Bakehouse, all of that. That's a single-story building. This regulation would work for that. Again, it was an incentive housing overlay zone that was adopted, that I believe still exists. And so he could, anyway, put the units up there, even under the current reg, this would allow them to continue to do so. I think it just essentially limits any new construction that includes mixed use. That's the big impact here. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of like, I'm still kind of struggling here because there's a bullet point here on the agenda that says they're going to remove sections and add sections. I would like to see it in context for what the actual is this the edited version, or is this the old version?
So what's up on the screen here now is the existing zoning regulations as they stand. So if I go back to section 9, .23, special uses. The following uses may be permitted when granted a special permit by the zoning commission, subject to the special permit requirements of section 25 and 25.5. 9.23 is mixed use development.
So they're going to strike that.
Strike that and replace it with 9.23 mixed use dash existing buildings.
So they're limited to only existing buildings. They don't want to add
any new construction.
Okay.
And then in the special criteria, if you will, or the special requirements that they'd have to meet, that's in section 25.5, and then list these 7 items.
So these are the 7 items. Where?
In 25.5. So it's just there.
I think I saw it. You might be able to do Control F and do 25.5. Search for 25.5.
So here it is, 25 table of minimum controls for specific special permits. So we would scroll down and we would find the use being what mixed use. So depending on agriculture,
So they're going to add a section under that for.
it would say mixed use existing buildings.
Hmm.
And under section 25.5, I'm going to be looking for where it says CB zone under mixed use. I zone, all right, okay.
This seems like kind of a seismic shift in the way our regs are written. Would it be appropriate to kind of ask for more time to consider what this would do through the prism of the POCD?
You certainly can ask, you can say, hey, we really would like to dive into this because this is a significant change to the current regs. But here, under 25.5, we have mixed-use development, CB zone, and number 1, the purpose of this regulation is to encourage development of Niantic Village, create an attractive environment, and provide an incentive for commercial development in the context of a mixed use. And they got a number of requirements already. Got to provide a site plan, traffic study, architectural plans, and any other additional items as may be required by the commission. Here are the controls: minimum lot size, 7,500 square feet. The residential density, in addition to the minimum lot size, the following additional lot area shall be required for the residential portion of the development. So they've got to provide some area for this, and that's 1,200 square feet for each efficiency or 1 bedroom, 2,000 square feet for each 2-bedroom.
It's big.
Parking requirements, again, with section 9.3.6, and it shall be based upon the greater of the calculation for the commercial portion of the premises. So there are standards here that have to be met. No individual building shall exceed 30,000 square feet. Maybe they could just modify that if they want smaller massing. That's potential. I think I might start there versus eliminating the entire regulation. What I do know is the regulation has been flexible enough to allow for what we've got developed thus far. And then no more than one set of additional housekeeping, one off-street, I'm sorry, one more. That ends there, sorry. So, I don't know how you want to just have more deliberation or discuss it further, but we certainly can request additional time if we think that's warranted. They don't necessarily have to give it to us.
Well, I mean, if they want to know whether we feel it matches with the POCD, and I don't know that we're necessarily, right now, I'm not.
Yeah, one
I'm not
section
feeling
here in the POCD I'm reading. Consider amending allowed uses or uses by special permit in the residential zone adjacent to CA, also residential zone. So, is CA and CB zone, is that the CB zone?
Well, CA and CB are two different zones.
Right, but this is the CB zone downtown.
This
right?
is the CB zone.
Right.
Yes.
To allow for more flexibility in home-based business uses and businesses that can be residential structures, can be operated as residential structures, thereby preserving character and feel, allowing a transition from commercial to residential zones, and increasing the availability of commercial. I guess it's not. I guess we're talking about more flexibility in the POCD while not negatively affecting, I guess, the quality.
So this would be restricting, this amendment would be restricting the flexibility of.
Right, but it talks about keeping its flavor of, the downtown area. There's another section with magnetic downtown, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's the major concern they have, I guess.
And also, if any building downtown became uninhabitable, for whatever reason, for them to rebuild, it would almost be impossible because it would no longer be an existing business.
I don't know that it needs to be an existing business. The proposed reg is existing building. So it would be an existing building that could potentially continue. But if the use, let's say the commercial use was discontinued, you might be back to, I guess it would be all residential, let's just say. If somebody converted it to all residential, it's an existing building, and I already got 2 stories, could I convert it? That would be my question. Under this regulation, could I convert that and put a commercial business in on the first floor if it's an existing residential 2-story building? I know I can do it in an existing 1-story. That's clear. I would note that Chapter 8, Commercial and Industrial Development, Section 8.1.2 of the POCD, talking about the CB commercial districts, is a commercial district designed to represent the central business district of the town, characterized by an intensive commercial and related development. The purpose of this district is to concentrate the main commercial enterprises of the town. And in recommendations of 8.2, recommendation number 10 says continue to support actions that strengthen Niantic's downtown CB commercial district, where much progress in this area has been achieved since the 2009 POCD. It's kind of limited there.
Not to mention the idea that we are in a housing shortage, and why would we want to hobble the amount of units that they could build on top of?
Now, recommendation number 1, though, limit future commercial development to existing commercially zoned areas. Support efficient use of commercial space by updating zoning regulations to allow multi-unit housing developments only as part of a mixed-use building, i.e. first floor commercial, top floors residential, to ensure that commercially zoned areas remain available for commercial uses.
So that particular one, the reasoning behind that was the town doesn't have a ton of commercial property. That was why that was included. I mean, I agree that we are in a housing shortage and need more housing. I'm just kind of giving the background of why that one was added, right? That was the reasoning behind adding that particular one, is we had said there was a shortage of commercial.
Correct.
Right, to try to address the housing. Yeah. So, I think, my own opinion here is based on these recommendations, and this is just one section of the POCD, that the proposed regulation would be inconsistent in that it's diminishing the ability to continue those actions that support economic development in downtown. I'll leave that to you.
I agree with
I
that.
agree. Get rid of mixed use, period.
So mixed use would only be allowed where there's an existing building.
Existing building, you can't build it.
All right. I'm sorry?
Seems restrictive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, only use older buildings.
Yeah, if something that's put a new, by multiple, like he said, you wanna buy a whole block, you wanna put in multiple buildings up, you can't. If you want mixed use, you can't put it. So that's, you can't expand downtown.
So I would certainly encourage maybe the subcommittee that they have further explore the language here, revise it. Again,
I'd like to make a motion that we ask for more time with this particular item and see if there's any interest in creating a joint subcommission with the zoning.
Do I hear a second?
Second. I second.
Thank you, Mr. Brownback. Any further discussion?
Well, perhaps as a caveat, we could say, if at this time you require an answer, it sounds like to me the answer is no. I mean, I'm not speaking for my fellow members, but it just seems like that's where the conversation is going.
Right, there's a lot of, there's a lot of details and a lot of scenarios, like even just a small change on one of these regulations can have an impact, a big impact, and not always the impact where they had thought it was going to be. So I would agree with that. Do you want to amend your motion to include those words?
I don't think so. It sounds a little threatening. Like
if I may, I would just recommend that the commission make a motion as to whether it's consistent or inconsistent. In either case, I mean, the zoning commission needs a majority vote, right, to pass whatever it is they're going to pass. So that being said, it is in the statutes written that if this agency found it inconsistent, they would need a majority vote to deny or in this case pass it. I didn't say deny. So to approve it. So that being said, I think I would just make a motion to either find it.
Okay, so there's currently a motion on the table. Should I withdraw that so we
Not necessarily. I think I would just amend your motion to find it inconsistent with the POCD and request, be somehow eloquently we say that we would request additional time to review or further analyze the proposal, and if the zoning commission had any interest, is to form a joint subcommittee to address whatever issues might be ailing the zoning commission on this.
All right, Mr. Chair, I would like to amend my motion. I would like to make a motion that we find this particular text amendment inconsistent with the POCD and that we ask for more time to look into how we could proceed with a text amendment that would be consistent with the POCD, and the mechanism we use to do that could be a joint subcommittee between the planning and zoning commissions.
Thank you, Mr. Deeble. Do I hear a second?
Second that again.
Thank you, Mr. Brownback. Any further discussion?
I just want to note, because we're making the finding that it's inconsistent,
We
We're
need to
not
have a
necessar-
reason.
yes, and I think the reason being is that it diminishes the economic, limits the ability for
Do we
mixed
have,
use development.
do we have the
Which is being-
section of the
It too greatly
POCD?
limits the ability
Section 8,
for.
I think that's
Section 8?
-2, 8-2, number 10,
which by, the reason being is by eliminating mixed-use development, it no longer supports the axis that have been strengthening the annex downtown since 2009. So
So I think you're
I don't think you have to-
amended.
I would like to amend
Motion.
again, but before I re-amend, should we also include the housing aspect of it? I mean, we did just create an affordable housing plan, and that was a big thrust of that. So is there that other section that you quoted?
I think you can amend it to include that in your motion. You can just note, basically, we're sending a report to the zoning commission, so it's going to have, your motion. I'm going to indicate what the motion is that it's inconsistent. Why? The planning commission would request additional time, as you had said, and then I would just need to clarify the language on the rest about the joint commission. So do you have that?
Yeah, I was going to ask him to restate it because there's been addition to addition.
So maybe if we,
You might want to
Let's just
motion.
withdraw the motion and start fresh.
Mr. Chair, I would like to withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dable.
Slowly.
So-
Boom.
So we have section 8.2, number 10, which encourages business development, right? That's the gist of that.
10, and then 8.21 is regarding the housing aspects of that.
So would it be fair to just say because of 8.2, attention number 1 and number 10?
Perfect.
Do I go again?
Right, is that, we'll just make sure that
Nope,
that's
we
going to
just-
sound clearly, right? That if you say that it's inconsistent with section 8.2, number 1 and number 10 of the East Lyme POCD, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
10.
8.2, number
Number
1,
and
and
10.
8.2, number 10. We might want to consider revising, maybe going to a lettering, because that could get confusing in the future.
All right, shall we give it another go?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that we find this particular text amendment inconsistent with POCD because it violates the precepts put forth in 8.2, specifically number 1 on housing and number 10 on economic development. Should I add a second?
Do you want, if you want that to be the motion, then within the minutes, I can write that you would like to have
Let's
a
do that.
joint meeting and possibly more time instead of having it be part of them.
That would be the clean way to do it. So as part of the report back to the commission, it'll include the next part. So if you just vote on that as a motion.
I'm done.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Bombeck?
I gotta have one.
He's the second guy so far on this.
I haven't had one go yet.
Any further discussion?
So now in the discussion, would they add that?
Yes, that would be.
So
part
this
of
is part of the discussion. So as part of the discussion,
Hey guys, I have an idea. What if the planning and zoning worked on a joint commission together to make sure that we could get a text amendment that would be consistent with the POCD in an efficient fashion?
That's a really great idea. I think we need some volunteers to be on that commission or that subcommittee, if it were to come to be. So, sometime in the future, we'll hopefully do that.
No, I could do it.
Any further discussion?
Volunteer if needed.
Mr. Bombeck indicated he has some interest.
I will volunteer as well.
Ms. Davison, thank you. So we have we have 4 people that would be interested. Mr. Luducier and Olivia, I'm sorry. Fairchild. Also, thank you. Would be interested in being on that subcommittee if it were
come to fruition.
to come to fruition. Any further discussion?
To me, if zoning is proposing this change, and it's obvious that it has some impact to the POCD. I think that commission should have reached out for some type of collaboration in their efforts, ahead of time, instead of just kind of dropping it over here. And I don't. A lot of towns, the zoning and planning are combined, right? Isn't that
Yeah, and
combined?
I would say there's a majority of the towns in Connecticut, you have a joint planning and zoning commission. We are one of, I think, 2 communities left in Connecticut that have separate. So yeah, there's the background behind this, other than looking at the subcommittee, the name of the subcommittee. That's the only thing that really gives us any reference as to why it was formed and what their concern is. So that's why I think I would agree with Brian that
It's a good observation.
it would have been great if maybe they just asked for a referral ahead of time, or even just something. But either way, moving forward, it is what it is. I'll anticipate an invitation if they continue to look at it. They may not. They may say it's, again, their board has to take a look at it. I'm not sure where it's going to end up after their public hearing.
Any further discussion? That was some good discussion. Thank you for the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Which brings us to no municipal referrals. Old business, proposed subdivision regulations.
Yes. So what I have, I handed out in front of you.
Yep.
Draft set of regulations. Some minor changes. And a handful of changes, but I'll point out the significant ones. So I tracked the changes so you would see them. If you go to section 4.
What page?
23. But section 4-2-15, remember that 4-2-16, and this section on taxes. And the section here reads, taxes must be paid current on the property subject to the subdivision. Documentation from the tax collector indicating that taxes are current shall be submitted. In the event taxes are not current at the time of application, the commission shall determine the application to be incomplete and deny said application. I guess that talking with Diane Vitagliano, our tax assessor, she's indicated that there's been some instances where taxes aren't paid ahead of time when the application is made. And based on the transfer of land, those taxes end up on the back of the purchaser versus the owner. And so I think this, like a building permit, what we currently require before the building permit can be issued is that taxes have to be paid current. So similar to that, this would be taxes are current before you make application to the planning commission. Section 4-3, non-residential, there's just a kind of a typo. To eliminate the comma. And the next page would be page 29, section 4-7, revisions to lot configuration. And this is what I'm proposing, as we've had in the past. I attempted to deny a lot line revision, which we were told I didn't have the authorization to do so because of it being incomplete. It sat on my desk for nearly a year, which is fine, but it kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense. So this would allow me as the planning director to deny the lot line revision. It gives the applicant the ability to appeal that decision to this commission. I would just ask, we get this reviewed by town attorney to verify whether or not it is in fact, we can legally do this under the statutes. I believe we can. But there you have it. That's the big one there. And then
Under section 4-10, incomplete applications, we're deleting a section there, which is where after the applicant has been offered the opportunity to withdraw the application, if it's incomplete, it's incomplete. I don't know why we would offer them the opportunity to withdraw it. I think whether the commission denied it because it was incomplete or they withdrew it, either way, they lose their application fee. So I'm not sure what that withdrawal offering really provides the applicant, other than it allows them, it affords them the opportunity to keep their application alive for a period of time. But again, if the commission ultimately finds it incomplete,
Well, when they submit these applications, they know exactly what constitute a complete application. Is that a true statement?
they should, based on our regulations. We have a checklist, and the regs should be clear in what constitutes a complete application. So we go through sections, basically 3 and 4 kind of lay out all the materials that need to be submitted, and then section 5 and 6, section 5 are all the required maps and plans, and then section 6 are all the design standard requirements. So theoretically, if they were familiar with sections 3 and 4, they would know all the materials that are required for the application, and if they read section 5, what they need to provide in terms of maps and plans, reports, and the like. And then in section 4-14, it's proposed to delete section 4-14-3, environmental review team evaluation, primarily because the ERT, we have some aren't doing ERTs for subdivision applications. Obviously, there is some issue when an applicant makes application. There's a timeline, and the environmental review team may take longer than that timeline allows. Again, and this regulation as it currently exists does not preclude the commission from approving or denying an application. It just says a report has to be furnished. Typically, the applicant professionals will furnish an environmental report if requested. Right? They'll pay for that to happen. So
the only question I have about this one, what is replacing this environmental review team? If we strike this from there, would that duty fall to the Wetlands Commission or to...
I think, well, there's a Natural Resources Commission that you could lean on, or some sort of review in that regard. I would also note that in section 5-2, subsection 5-2-2B, Natural and Cultural Resources and Site Analysis Plan is required to be submitted. So we get the plans, staff, such as myself, would review and comment on. It provides, there's a laundry list of items that Cultural Resources and Site Analysis Plan has to provide. We also require a Resource Impact and Conservation Plan, and then of course construction plans. So the Wetland Agency acts somewhat like that. Again, their jurisdiction is limited to the area currently, wetlands and watercourses in the area within 300 feet of those.
Gary, was there something that came up recently that the state required an ERT, but it didn't exist at deep or something? There was some environmental thing that the state required that we had to have people apply for, but it didn't seem to even exist at a state level.
I'm not sure if that's this. I mean, this is similar to that statement in that the ERT is a separate organization. So as we know, we can't predicate our decisions of a subdivision approval or on that of another agency. So whether in the ERT, if you look at an ERT, it's literally just an environmental review of the existing conditions and what's out on the site. Everything from rock outcrops to the rabbits and or salamanders. So it'll evaluate the forest, the marshlands, the existing conditions of a piece of property, and its environmental resources. That's what an ERT is. Doesn't say one way or the other whether developing that is going to be good or bad. That would be an environmental impact statement that has different standards to be had, which EPA puts out.
Which is part of our own subdivision regulations.
Correct. There is, through the subdivision regulations, there is a process in which we request that information.
So this is kind of redundant, and it gives our authority to another group.
Definitely redundant. I don't know, it doesn't really give them our authority to them. It just says it's in order for us to take action on an application, we're required to have this report. What if that agency doesn't ever produce that report? So we can't predicate our decision on that. That would just be, basically taking the due process away from the applicant.
Wasn't there a subdivision application that they didn't respond and they just waived it or something? Recently, wasn't there one case where they didn't? Sounds.
Yeah, there was a case similar to that.
They never responded within time
So,
period.
I think the regs, certainly we can go back. I did ask Ally to continue to take a look at the regulations and say, give us a recommendation of where we can maybe bolster or better improve the request for that information so that at least this commission can evaluate the environmental impact. I think we could add a requirement that an environmental impact statement be provided.
I think I like that better than just striking it completely.
I would agree
Yeah.
with Kurt.
So, do you want to come up? There's different levels, I guess, if you will. I'm imagining a standard for that environmental impact statement.
But the thing that I like about this thing is that it's saying that environmentally sensitive resources such as wetlands, steep slopes, water courses, flood hazard, ridge lines be subject to an evaluation. Now, whether it's this Eastern Connecticut environmental review team or if there's some other way that this evaluation can be done, I still feel like there is some value there.
Yes.
That's my personal thought. We probably could get in trouble because the way it's written now, because this ERT team may or may not be able to do what we're saying that they're going to do. We can't tell them what to do because they don't work for us, right? That's a different organization.
They're an independent organization.
But I feel like there is some value there. That's just my thought. I don't know. Maybe we change the mechanism from being the Eastern Connecticut review team to some other. Maybe shift the burden of that onto wetlands, or because they're kind of geared towards the environmental impact of development.
So the regs, 5-2-2, subsection B, the second paragraph, says the commission and its staff shall review the plan to assess its accuracy and likely impact upon the natural and cultural resources on the property. So that basically says this commission conducts that review, and then we go through what information shall be included. And on page 36, we talk about the delineating ponds, streams, ditches, drainage ways, the 100-year floodplains and such. Vegetative cover, provide the soil series, ridge lines and watershed boundaries shall be identified. Viewshed analysis, ID geologic formations. So we're requesting all of this information, and they're supposed to provide a preliminary resource impact and conservation for all subdivision applications to categorize the impacts to those resources. So I think we have it here. I think we just got to apply it maybe more strongly.
Would it be maybe a good idea to keep some of this language from the ERT, but say an option that the applicant can also, in lieu of creating one of these ERT evaluations, can simply defer to their environmental impact study or something like that? So we're not completely striking this, saying, you could do it, or you could just do that environmental impact study stuff. And we wouldn't have to strike from our subdivision regulations language that's intended to protect the environment.
Yeah, look at page 21, Gary's point. As part of the design report, we're asking them to submit. We're asking landmark and asset trees, unique specific scenic features, biological surveys. Already asked them for a lot of that.
And
That's true.
most of that already comes on the plans. It's shown, we can easily identify it. So I think we get the information. My thought was the ERT was basically the way to just verify that it's in fact accurate, you know. So from that perspective, I almost think like third-party review would be appropriate. And that's similar to, say, the wetland agency. They have what they charge is a complex application fee. We have a line item, which is a pass-through account, and that fee we charge the applicant. But theoretically, that money is to pay for the third-party consultant to peer review the information that's been provided.
And does it, what triggers that mechanism?
That's under in wetlands.
Right, so it only happens if it's in certain distance to a wetland or water course. Where this would happen regardless of the wetland or water course, it would be, it's supposed to happen anyway.
Right, and we have what we have in section 2. Appendix E of our regulations, the application fee. 2.1.5 of that section is the professional/legal consultation. So if you want a third-party review, we would be charging a fee to cover that. Now, I have to work with finance to create that pass-through account. I don't believe it's set up that way, so we'd have to establish the fee ahead of time in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, this is a little bit contrary to my other comments too, but we are not like, we're not like an environmental review board. We're more of a land use board, but we kind of want to protect the land too. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of mixed still.
So in terms, I would also, these are, the other thought there is, they're referrals. You could just, rather than saying it's a requirement to provide the ERT, it's just required to refer it to them. And whether or not they respond back or not, that's the, I think, the extent that we could go with the requirement. Again, similar to, say, the health district, when we're looking for their approval of suitability on a lot, right? Our regulations specify that we need correspondence from them stating that the lot's suitable. So that might be the one exception to the rule, is that that is something that has to happen. But
well, the other thing is like this one bullet that we're talking about striking here. It says, shall be subject to the evaluation of the ERT. It doesn't really say, does it, what the outcome of their findings, how it would impact whatever application we have. Does it?
no, it's
So really, they could review it, they could not review it.
It's their choice.
Yeah, and it's kind of like there's no teeth in here that I could tell anyway. Unless I'm not seeing something.
correct. There's no
teeth in that. Otherwise, it's basically, the purpose of this is that wherever the commission might have concerns about environmental impacts, that they could comment, because they'd be the professional organization that would have the expertise in environmental impact per se, right?
Mm.
Can you change to may be subject to an evaluation
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, why not?
Shall be, or shall be referred to, like, I think, if we say referred to means they just pass it off to them, right? So they could look at it or not look at it. Is that,
If you say shall be referred, yeah, it doesn't say that it has to be commented on. Again, that has no teeth either. It's just saying they would just document that they sent it there, certified mail or something.
right, so I guess I'm striking this or not striking this, it really doesn't make too much difference, does it? I mean, where we would get in trouble is if we didn't follow it.
Correct.
So if we didn't refer it to the Eastern Environmental Review Team, we could get in trouble.
If you didn't, well, this is, again, it's specific to subdivisions of 20 lots or more. Where more than 50% of the parcel to be subdivided consists of environmentally sensitive areas.
I don't know.
To me, it just sounds like another opportunity to pause and check how this is going to have an environmental impact. I don't think it's a bad thing, even if it's toothless. If you as the town planner want to make this language more efficient, I would hope that maybe there'd be a way to do that without completely striking it.
Okay.
Just because, it's come up in the POCD surveys, it's come up in a lot of what we do here, just the appetite to be careful with environmentally sensitive areas is great. It's not, like you said, Kirk, it's not our charge, but it's definitely woven throughout the fabric of what we deal with. So I would say keep it, and if you could amend, maybe find a way to keep it.
Well, maybe he's saying instead of shall be subject to an evaluation by the review team, you could just say shall be required to submit an environmental impact statement. Those EISs are pretty extensive, especially, well, at least the ones that I'm familiar with from New York. I could elaborate on that language in particular. I'll need more time to go back and revise this, but I can
I would
certainly
agree with that.
could do that.
I mean, it'd be nice to know if we were gonna mow down the last habitat for the horned owl or something like that.
I think in this next, this is the
The
Eastern
salamanders.
white cottontails one.
But
Something.
if we make a decision to approve something, and then it comes back a year later that the habitat for the last horned owl is gone, it's too late at that point. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have approved it, and
So they don't have a time to get their reviews done? Like, we're all on a time limit. We have limits for everything. Why do they not?
environmental review team,
Yeah.
because they're just a private organization. There's two in Connecticut. I believe they're there to just provide assistance and guidance, usually in the sale of large tracts of undeveloped land. In particular, they were leaned on heavily by the communities to get these, comments as to how that would impact subdivisions. And I think the ERT over time was inundated with requests from 169 different municipalities, being that there was only two agencies in Connecticut. One, if you just split the state in half by the Connecticut River, one covered
Right.
eastern, one covered western. And the ERT is made up of volunteers. I believe they have like one or two full-time employees who coordinate those volunteers, and they do make up or are comprised of professionals from DEEP and from the local community, from private industry, self-employed soil scientists, foresters, and things like that. So you have to get volunteers to go do this work, and they're just, again, volunteering. They're not getting paid. So while it's a great service and great information, for instance, we had it done on Oswegatchie. We have an ERT for Oswegatchie Hills and Darrow Pond. Valuable, and they were willing to do the reviews for those because the acquisitions were for open space. ERT, if you go onto the website, I can go there now if you'd like. They're not reviewing applications related to subdivisions. They just won't do it.
I
So
think that's
if
what
we were
came up at the
cons-
last
oh.
meeting. Sorry.
And if we were concerned about a specific subdivision, we could just go to a third party to have it reviewed if we had concerns that were serious.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
So, and in this case, I'll just note, who can apply for an ERT? Chief elected officials, chairpersons, Connecticut Land Trust, but private citizens, citizen groups, engineers, and developers may not request an ERT assistance. So we're requiring the applicant, or in this case, us to go refer this to them. And certainly we can request it. Here.
I think an environmental statement, like you were saying before, might be a reasonable compromise, right? Because there are standard environmental impact statements, right? Is that a formal thing? If you say you're looking for an environmental impact statement, it's going to be a pretty formal report.
Correct. The Route 11 comes to mind. Connecticut DOT had an environmental impact statement done for that corridor study. It was quite, it's a massive, voluminous document. I think it might be a little even more in depth than just an ERT. But NEPA provides these standards. And it's just an example of purpose and needs to promote informed decision making by federal agencies, so they require the environmental impact statement. So we could follow them as for guidance in terms of requiring what we should require so that we can make that review. And again, as Nicole, we can always refer it out to a third party. We can charge that professional fee, and maybe that's how we should revise the language.
So in terms
we
of
can come up with maybe two different scenarios there and present it back to the
In
commission.
terms of moving this forward, there's some language that I think we all consider fine the way you've proposed it, and other that's not so great, or not there yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How do those things impact each other? Can we separate them out and say we like these, we don't like those, or do we have to approve or disapprove these?
No, this is just discussion.
Okay.
At the end of the day, whatever we fall upon, we'll then decide, the commission will then decide, okay, we're ready, we'll send it to a public hearing.
Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I can go back, I can continue to revise these and try to massage this a little better. So that while it may not be an ERT evaluation, it could require a,
Well, it'd be nice to know some
Yes.
background from the impact on the environment, the wetlands, the slopes, sensitive areas. Was that the last change from this that you had?
I believe that was the last change. And then there, as I said, Ally is working on additional changes to some of the submittal requirements, just to make sure that we've got it's more of a black and white, making sure we have enough copies, proper copies, making sure we get digital submission of all items versus the hard copies. We're kind of trying to transition there. So making some changes like that. She's working on them. My last discussion with her is that we're not ready. So these kind of major ones, the taxes, the ERT, this one in particular, as you know, has kind of gotten us into some pending litigation. So with that, I felt that those were the major ones to address, at least before we get to the others. They will be forthcoming. So being that I have to go back and revise this, maybe the timing will be such that we'll be able to commingle them. And I can bring those other changes to you next month.
It looks good though. I mean, like,
So, all right, so with that, I think I have some direction there. I can go forward. I'll contact Ally. We'll see if we can move her end of it along, and maybe we can commingle it. We address this next month, and then that's what April, probably May. Maybe we get a public hearing in May, June. From that perspective, the population grows over the summer, so I don't know if we get more turnout or not, but that brings me to commenting on a hybrid meeting. Do we, I can talk to Michelle as well, get her input, see if you guys want to go that route. We can post agendas so that we can do the hybrid. And we have the technology now; it's all set up. So, it might have been, had we posted it a hybrid meeting agenda, she could have joined us. It might have been, beneficial that way. She could have called in as well, but that said, I think she was taking this for business purposes.
so that's it for old business. New business, we have none, and that brings us to adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Fitting. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Ms. Davison. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, meeting adjourned.